Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I am going to be talking about Liverpudlian post-punk icon Pete Wylie and his band WYLIE. Or is it WYLIE the Mongrel? Or is it the Mighty WAH? Or is it Wahit? Or is it Shembeko WAH? You know what? It's all of those and so many more. And I know that some Americans are probably saying, I've never heard of Pete Wylie. What is the big deal with him? Get it? What is the big... Anyway, let's get into who Pete Wylie is. In 1977, there was a legendary band formed. And this band was comprised of Ian McCulloch, later of Echo and the Bunnymen, Julian Cope, later of Teardrop Explodes and Solo, and Pete Wylie. All three of these artists, incredibly gifted. 1977, I think they were together May, June, and then that was it. And then they went off in their different directions. Now, Pete did work in some bands over the next year with Julian Cope, but that Crucial 3 band never recorded anything. But, Ian McCulloch, Julian Cope, and Pete Wylie. That should have been amazing. So by 79, Ian had already formed Echo and the Bunnymen, Julian, Teardrops, and Pete Wylie formed a band called WAH. Or maybe it was Wahid at that time. There's so many different variations on the name WAH that you have to think to yourself, like, what the fuck? Anyway, Pete Wylie and WAH started putting out singles like Better Scream, 7 Minutes to Midnight, and they were, building a following there in Liverpool. So they signed to, I think, Warner Brothers, and they released the album called Na equals Poo, The Art of Bluff, or it could be Na Poo, whatever it is. It's an incredibly wonderful album because it's so different. Pete Wylie, I love his voice. He's got a great voice. And he's one of those songwriters that understands the concept of pop music, and he understands that there's supposed to be some kind of formula, some kind of blueprint he's supposed to follow, but he figures, you know what? I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to do it this way. So the early singles in this album were very, post-punky, but very different too. It had some of those classic guitar slashes that Pete Wylie and WAH were known for. And also you could hear those on like the first Echo album and the first Teardrop Explodes album, but they're really prevalent on the WAH recordings. Now this album that came out in 1981, the CD features bonus tracks. So you're going to get A-sides and B-sides. And it's really a wonderful, wonderful collection of songs, but it's very post-punk. It's not traditional pop, although it's very pop. So don't go in there and think you're going to hear something like the Jags or the Jam or the Clash, because he was approaching music in a very different way and very riveting and intriguing and melodic. Now, the following year, there was sort of an official, unofficial bootleg that came out, and that was called the Maverick Years. And this features songs that were old and new. And this was released kind of like those old bootleg LPs where it was a white sleeve and then you'd get like a photocopy piece of paper in there. And that's what it looked like there. And this CD version has loads of bonus tracks. Again, they weren't nationally known, but in Liverpool, they were inspiring a lot of different artists. Like I said, music fans were intrigued by this artist who had a voice that you could put on in a pop record and make a pop hit with, but he wasn't playing by any rules. And that is what's fascinating and wonderful about Pete Wylie and all the WAH releases. And when I tell you there were many different variations on the name WAH, like I said, Wahit, JF WAH, Shembeko WAH, the Mighty WAH, WAH the Mongrel. That's probably why he didn't catch on commercially, because people probably just thought like, oh, what's with all these different bands with WAH in their title? They didn't realize it was one guy creating this stuff. Pete Wylie was the heart and soul of that band. In 1984, put out a compilation called The Way We Wah, which is not on CD to my knowledge. But also that same year, put out probably his most commercially successful album to date, and that was called A Word to the Wise Guy, and that was released under the name The Mighty WAH. And it's very pop. Again, unconventional, but much more commercial than the earlier recordings. There's a wonderful single on this called Come Back, which should have just been massive all over the world. It was like post-punk produced by Phil Spector. It was absolutely incredible. And this CD version has loads of bonus tracks. And eventually, Pete Wylie put the WAH band name to rest, and he released a solo album by the name of Sinful. And that is the album there. And actually, come to think of it, this actually did get released in the U.S. And the song Sinful got a lot of airplay, but there's a lot of great songs on this album, like 41144. And it's really a wonderful collection of songs. It's very, very, very commercial, but he holds back just a little bit. And, he doesn't go full top 40, but the album is kind of glossy and intriguing and fun. And this is probably the most pop album that he had released. So kind of veering off the Pete Wylie track here, there was a band from Liverpool called The Farm. And in 1990, they released a single called All Together Now. And Pete Wylie had helped them out in the studio, and his voice was very prominent during the chorus of that song.
Together.
So that attracted more attention to Pete Wylie. So he signed a new deal, and he put out an album under the name Pete Wylie and WYLIE the Mongrel. And that album is called Infamy, or How I Didn't Get Where I Am Today. And another great collection of pop songs by Pete Wylie. These songs were sounding more like the early 1991 Manchester baggy dance craze. But again, filled with some great, great pop songs. And as good as this album is, it didn't do that well commercially as far as I remember. It certainly wasn't released in the US. And I didn't hear anything about Pete Wylie for another 9 years. But in 2000, he put out an album called Songs of Strength and Heartbreak. And this is released under the name The Mighty Wah, again, like their album A Word to the Wise Guy. What a glorious collection of songs. From what I understand, these were originally recorded for a major label. The major label turned down the album, and he had to wait until he can get the tapes back, and then they released this album. There's a song on here called Heart as Big as Liverpool. There's other songs on here that are so amazing in scope and in melody, and this was an album kind of like one of those things that you wait your lifetime to record an album like this, and this absolutely superb and wonderful. The Mighty Wah, Songs of Strength and Heartbreak, was a pure triumph for Pete Wylie. Also at that same time, in the time that these earlier albums were released on CD, they released a 2-CD compilation called The Handy Wah Hole, Songs from the Repertoire, the Maverick Years, and this is wonderful. It contains, I think, almost every early single, A and B side, and then it features choice album tracks, and it goes all the way up to Songs of Strength and Heartbreak. An excellent collection of songs. Like I said, 2 CDs. By listening to this, it's hard to deny this guy's talent, and why he hasn't put out more albums and why he doesn't get a lot more attention is absolutely beyond me. Maybe it's because he doesn't play by the rules. That sometimes will hurt a career. So it took another 17 years before he put out his next album under the name Pete Wylie, and the album is called Pete Sounds, obviously a play on Pet Sounds. Another incredible collection of songs. I mean, this was 2017. This was, 40 years after the Crucial Three had first got together, and he was still top of his game as a songwriter, and that voice was still very much intact. Now here we are 7 years later. We don't have any official releases. I believe that there are some digital releases or maybe fan club only things that have come out, usually live performances, radio performances. I'm only focusing on the studio albums or the compilations, and that's where this album is called Teach Yourself Wah, Best of Pete Wylie and the Mighty Wah. And this again is a career-spanning collection. It starts with, early singles, and it contains songs from each of the albums I've talked about. And this being a single disc, it really pulls up the highlights. And these are basically the stepping stones of his career. Really wonderful. There's an unreleased song on here. There's 2 songs, Better Scream and 7 Minutes to Midnight, which were re-recorded for this compilation. But otherwise, it's a great introduction. With the Handy Wah Hole 2 CD compilation, it takes in much more. But if you want to get yourself accustomed to who Pete Wylie is, in fact, I think that this album cover, was that by Pete Townsend? I don't know. I thought I saw that written somewhere. I couldn't find it in the liner notes, but I can't see much anymore. But it's really a fantastic collection of songs that'll introduce you to this incredibly gifted, underrated, overlooked talent from Liverpool. So now what I've done is I've put together a medley featuring just snippets of a few songs from his career. And I just wanted to offer, some of the maybe more commercial bits to encourage you to immerse yourself in Pete Wylie and Wah's catalog. So sit back, relax, give this a listen, and I will see you on the other side.
7 minutes to midnight, and I'm crawling out my shell. 7 minutes to midnight, and it's hell. 7 minutes to analyze, my instinct must be quick. 7 minutes to midnight, I feel sick. If it only said no more story, I wouldn't take so long to realize there's a simple code that will never fail. But if it's too late, only time will tell. Remember, there's a different way. Remember, you've got the chance to sorry of the blues. They take your pride, turn it on inside, and then you realize you've got nothing left to lose. Come back, I'm willing to try. Come back, don't let time go by. Come back, the will to survive. Come back, come back. With time on my hands, come back. I'm making a stand. Cheers for 11:44. She's deep and she's shallow. Follow me. Ooh, it's simple. It's tragic. It's simple. It's tragic. And the good guys don't die. In the world I left behind. And the good guys don't die. In the world I left behind. Heart as big as my hometown. Lay me down by Waterloo. Heart as big as the city. Heart as big as Liverpool. 'Cause I'm free falling. Yes, I'm free falling. Oh, I'm free falling. I'm in love with you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Free. You better scream, 'cause here come the saints. You better scream and run and pray. Here come the saints. With 7 angels from the CIA.
Anyway, that's it. I really appreciate you watching this video. I hope it inspires you to check out the music of Pete Wylie and Wah. And you can definitely check out this album now. It is now available. It's called Teach Yourself Wah, the best of Pete Wylie and the Mighty Wah. Just came out. Wonderful collection, spans his entire career, single disc, and it's going to open a gateway for you to just step in and enjoy all this great music. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.